This is Barry Heads with Shark Counsel. Thanks for tuning in and giving me your time. This week, we're still in our courage series. So, we're going to call this sharp snippet Four Types of Courage. Again, four types of courage. So, let's just jump right in. We all face times in our life where we have to be courageous. That opportunity comes whether we like it or not, whether we're prepared for it or not. We have to be courageous. All right. It's not courage is or fear is not something of the past. It's something in the present and sometimes something we will have to face in the future. But let's get into it deeper. Going against the crowd is a difficult thing to do. Whether we're trying to be courageous in our hairstyle, our dress, the colors we wear, where we live, if we choose to live away from our home city or our home state or our home country, how we even choose to speak takes courage sometimes. One of my former advisors named Joseph taught about four types of courage. He was teaching we can call it a class. It was about maybe a little less than 200 people. But again, my former advisor, he was teaching us about the four types of courage. And I want to pass those jewels along that he passed to me in that crowd, if they still remember or took notes that day. So the four types of courage are social, physical, creative, and moral courage. I'll say that again: social, physical, creative, and moral courage. So, when we take the steps to become more courageous, what do we typically find? We're mocked or we're separated from sometimes our old friends or people we used to work with. So, um, taking those courageous steps has a cost to it. Don't let anybody lie to you. Being courageous will have a cost on many occasions. Not all, but many occasions. Hopefully you're celebrated for your courageous actions. Now, that's not always the case, and that's not the primary reason for taking a courageous action just for money or attention or applause, but it can come. So let's talk about the first one. The first type of courage we call social, okay? And let me give you an example. Think of a child who grows up in poverty, then seeks to go to college and work in a profile company and probably move up that corporate ladder. She seeks to be different from her family and gets rejected. So think about it this way: the young lady grows up in poverty, or not in a stable, her family is not in a stable place financially. And when she first makes those steps to do well in school, and then she goes off to college, she sort of separates herself from her family. So those social ties are being broken down. And then when she goes to a large company, her family members might feel frightened or jealous or envious. All these things come to play. And then you have that courage to take those steps that no one else has probably ever taken in her family, whether it's going to college and getting her degree or her PhD, or working in a large company and moving up the corporate ladder and having a different life financially. It doesn't mean she thinks she's better than her family, but things come along with that price. And continuing to talk about social courage, I want to talk about a famous painter that probably almost all of us know. The famous painter Pablo Picasso was once jeered for his creativity. Before he died, he was one of the most famous painters in history, and his art is still seen in museums today. I've gone to plenty of museums in the Los Angeles area and looked at a number of different works from Pablo Picasso. But it's interesting to find that when we do a little research on Pablo, when he changed his style and he went a total different direction with his creativity and his work, people hated it initially. People talked about him. They, said he was a has-been, that he'll never be good, that he's lost his mind, etc., etc. But when he died, he was one of the greatest artists in the painting world in history. So that's social courage to be able to change and deal with those bumps in the road and continue uh, to go forth with your vision that you've created. The second type of courage is physical courage. So this is simple. We don't have to go into too much detail because we see it from time to time, especially on the news or in newspapers and journals. Think about the firefighter who runs into a burning building and sacrifices his life, or potentially sacrifices his life for someone else. Okay, I've talked to many firefighters. There's a job I used to have where quite a bit of firefighters and police officers will come by, and I would ask the firefighters from time to time, what's the, craziest thing you've ever done? And so many stories: falling through a burning roof, going into a burning building, saving someone, getting lost, not knowing how to get out, and following their instincts. So many different things. But that is physical, a type of physical courage. The third one is creative courage. So, I'll give you another example. Think of a Latina walking into a boardroom. She's on the company's board, and not only is she the youngest individual in the room, she's the only female and the only Latina in the room. So, um, when the board is discussing topics and finalizing topics and um, making final decisions on which way they think that their organization should go, does she speak up? Does she let her peers know about her ideas? Um, if she disagrees with what the individuals in the room have come up with, does she say she disagrees? Does she speak openly? That's one example of creative courage. And then the last type of courage that I want to talk about is moral courage. And this may be the most difficult um, type of courage to have and to grow and to persist with, because building our moral character is one of the more difficult things we'll do in life as we grow. So let me give you an example of moral courage. When I think moral courage, I think of people like Nelson Mandela, um, who was put in a prison, fought for civil rights, got out, and eventually became president of a country. Um, and when I think about moral courage, I even think about even less known people. Those people that are sort of anonymous, that work everyday jobs, work 9 to 5 or 8 to 6, and work hard and put in those hours. And their names may not be recorded in history, but they have to exhibit moral courage. And what I'm thinking about is right at the present moment is bankers that work at banks, or tellers that work at banks, and they're told to open up fake accounts and um, put individuals names on those fake accounts for their own benefit, to get raises, to move up in the company. And those people that say no can be costing themselves money, or a potential position, or forward movement in their career, or even being fired um, for not following boss's orders. So I really respect those people. We've seen that a number of times in America, where we have supervisors and managers of banks um, engaging in corrupt practices, and the people, quote unquote, below them exhibit moral courage and say, hey, I'm not participating in that. I'm not um, going to participate in these unethical practices. So those are the 4 types of courage. I hope you wrote them down or will remember them. I sure did. I remember when my advisor told me, and they've had a great effect on my life. So I'll go over them again. 1 is social courage. 2 is physical courage. 3 is creative courage. And 4, maybe the most challenging of them all, is moral courage. So I hope that helps you out in some way during your day and throughout your week, and probably this year, hopefully. But thanks again for your time. This is Barry Heads with Sharp Counsel. Take care.